Go ahead and go on. So moving on, I'm going to go ahead and read through a lot right here. It says, for a covenant is valid, verse 18, therefore, even the first covenant was not inaugurated without blood. There was still the sacrifice of animals then. For when every commandment had been spoken by Moses to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of the calves and the goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the covenant which God commanded you. And in the same way he sprinkled both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry with the blood. And according to the law, one may almost say all things are cleansed with blood. Without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So again, this is something that had to take place. Moving on throughout the chapter, in verse 23, therefore, it was necessary for the copies of things in the heavens to be cleansed with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a holy place made with hands, a mere copy of the true one, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. All right? So it talks about in heaven there being, to a certain extent, replications of what we had here on earth in the earthly tabernacle. We don't know if that actually means a visual representation of the Ark of the Covenant like one artist has portrayed here, or if it's trying to imply Christ is our Ark of the Covenant. He is our symbol. All right? Now, to a certain extent, Christ is certainly the one who died upon the mercy seat when he died upon the cross for us, right? But it implies that in heaven there will be a similar tabernacle to the one on earth, whether that's an actual, here you have the altar, here you have the Ark of the Covenant, we don't know. Right? It may just be that it's implying that the same type of actions will take place, the same type of redemption. All right? Moving on. So, then in verse 24 and 25, it says, for Christ did not enter a holy place made with hands, a mere copy of the true one, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Nor was it that he would offer himself often, as the high priest enters the holy place, year by year with blood that is not his own. All right, so again, this is something that took place once a year when it was through the high priest, but Christ only had to do it once because his was perfect. Even when the high priest did it, it wasn't perfect. All right? It was something that he had to do only once. Going on to verse 26. Otherwise, he would have needed to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the consummation of the ages, he has been manifested to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. All right? So it states that this is something that has been ordained from the foundation of the world. So before the creation of the world, this master plan was in place. All right? We knew, or not we knew, but God knew that he was going to send his son to die for us even before we sinned. All right? It's this great master plan. It's kind of like Christ knew that this redemption was going to take place. And so when they made the sacrifices in the Old Testament, it was a sacrifice that was symbolic, but it was still covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, even though he technically hadn't died yet. Because Christ is out of time. God is out of time. Time is something God has created. Like, we're bound within time. We can't really conceive of being outside of time. It'd kind of be like, again, Matt, you're a good punching bag. Matt goes and buys a car, all right? And the guy's like, okay, how are you going to pay for it? All right? Oh, I already paid you in the future. Do you think the guy would sell him the car? Definitely not. He'd be like, that's funny. How about you pay me in the now, right? And so basically that's what Christ did. You'd smile. You'd smile. Matt, I'm sure you could pull it. Matt can charm anybody. But anyway.
I try real hard.
You do. I'm good. All right. So the point there is that Jesus Christ under the old covenant, his blood was still covering those sins. So those sacrifices were not in vain. They were just symbolic. The sacrifices themselves didn't make them holy, but Christ's blood was still covering them. All right? Moving on to verse 27. And inasmuch as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment, so Christ, also having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time for salvation, without reference to sin, to those who eagerly await him. So we know that he's coming back, right? He's made that sacrifice. We know he came back after 3 days. He was resurrected. And now it's implying he's going to come back eventually. This will be the fulfillment of the covenant, of the new covenant. When he comes back, he establishes his kingdom upon earth. He is our high priest. He will be our high priest forever and ever. All right? Next slide. So what does this mean for us? I know I've been kind of approaching things from a big academic perspective today, kind of talking about all these historical details and things, which is good and fine, but at the end of the day, we need some application. How does this affect our lives now?